Welcome everyone, Costin here with a discussion about Total War Warhammer 3 Immortal Empires. In this video I want to talk about the worst possible campaigns you can play if you are a new player, if you want to learn the game, because that's what counts here. Which campaigns are not suitable for you to learn the game as a new player? Not because the races or legendary lords aren't necessarily weak. In fact, quite a few, if not all of them on this list, will be pretty strong ones. But they're not really suitable for a new player to learn the game. But why is that? Well, because they might not have to deal with some of the issues that many of the races, most of the races and lords in the game have to deal with, be it economically, with their armies, with settlements. In fact, settlements are going to be an actual key feature over here because quite a few of the races on this list may not have to deal with minor settlements at all or very little. So anyway, to start off, let's talk about the Wood Elves. The Wood Elves are a fairly defensive race, and they have a fairly defensive-oriented campaign. To win, you basically need to take the smaller trees on the map and heal the big tree, and that's over to the north in Lorem over here. When you start a campaign as the Wood Elves, you will have control of the Oak of Ages. Now, how do you do this? Well, you take minor settlements, but you can raise them to the ground, you can give them to an ally. You don't have to keep them yourself. Your economy is based on the various small trees that you do control. Now, you need to fill this meter up, but you gain significant benefits while doing so. Now, why does this matter? Why does all of this matter? Well, by concentrating your economy, unit production in just a handful of settlements, major settlements. Like this is a turn 61 campaign. I've got one here in the heart of the jungle in the south. I've got one in Cafe. I've obviously got the Oak of Ages, but Oak isn't the proper settlement. It's only got one structure. But I've got one in Cafe and the starting one, which is over here in Nagrand. That's it, 3 settlements. Why is this significant? Well, by not having to deal with the minor settlements or passing them off to allies or vassals if you can get them. Not sure if you can really vassalize these Wood Elves. I haven't even really tried. By allies. Because you can get alliances very easily if you're just giving them settlement for practically nothing. For instance, here I allied Katep very easily because I gave him a bunch of territory for zilch. Or gave him a bunch of territory. I loves it when you do that. And you need to hold these other settlements, these heartlands, so to speak, in order to heal the tree. But once that tree is healed, you don't care about it anymore, really. You don't care about the territory. You just need to fill the meter, basically. By only relying on a handful of such of these settlements that have a very powerful garrison to begin with. Like, the Witchwood here has 14 units in its garrison, and I don't have the garrison structure that could improve that, vastly improve that, by a substantial amount. What does this do? Well, it means you can't lose a campaign, effectively. It means you're not at risk. It means you're never in any real danger. It means it doesn't matter how poorly thought out your campaign plan is, because you're always going to be able to recover, because the AI would very rarely attack such a settlement like this. Because if they do, they lose. Like, the AI can struggle attacking any walled settlement in any campaign, or any major settlement in any campaign, let alone one that has such a major garrison like the one presented here. And I have a full army over here that I could send to deal with, like, say, the Skaven. Though the Skaven are not going to be a threat here for my settlement. That means you're safe, you don't have to deal with consequences, and it means you're not learning how to tackle campaign movement properly, and it means you're not tackling empire building properly, having to manage minor settlements effectively. And all the risks that are associated with that in terms of territory, expanding in territory. Also messes up your diplomacy when you're just, like, giving away a lot of territory, because minor settlements, like outside of the trees, the minor provinces mean nothing to you. They only get one structure, they offer nothing, very little. Some benefits, sure, a couple of benefits, but they're not really worth keeping, as opposed to making a lot of money and alliances by just offering the territory to other factions. The second thing with the Wood Elves is their army composition. They're a ranged focus army. Now, there are some problems with that in Warhammer 3, specifically with sieges, but by and large, because their ranged is so good, some of the best in the game, if not the best in the game, because their range is so good, you're just gonna steamroll many of your enemies. And even when you can't rely on range, like sieges, for instance, wall sieges, you do have options. Treekin, the tree spirits of Athelloren, Treekin in particular, are an absolute bring absolute ruin on the battlefield. Yeah, the elves are probably very strong, too strong right now in a battlefield. The only counter that really exists to them is fire, and the AI is poor at using fire against you. Like, they're all flammable, right? They're all very flammable. Like, they've got 25% fire weakness, so if you're dealing with flaming attacks, you're going to end up suffering a great deal. But that absolutely is not going to be an issue in the campaign. Hell, even when you are dealing with flaming attacks, these guys, these tree spirits, are so deadly. And that's on top of the range. Like, you just kill entire armies with zero effort, zero strategy or tactics before they even reach you. You're that strong, because the range damage on your units is ridiculous. Is absolutely freaking ridiculous from the very start of your campaign, let alone how it can be buffed. And it can be buffed. For instance, over here I have a structure, you can get that very quickly, that gives you at level 2 5% missile strength to all armies faction wide, 10% missile strength. So those two factors, one, that they don't have to hold territory, means that they're very safe, that they're relying on these heavily fortified settlements, and two, because their armies are incredibly strong. So even if their settlements, in the rare occasion that their settlements are at risk, you just end up decimating the enemy that's coming against you. It's a great race, don't get me wrong, they're very strong on the campaign map, but if you're a new player, you're trying to learn the mechanics of the game, it isn't a good race, or any of the Wood Elven campaigns cannot be recommended if you're a new player, because you're not really going to learn the important lessons playing them. If you want to just steamroll the map, sure, it's a good choice, don't get me wrong on that, but if you want to learn the lessons, you can play some of the more traditional, let's say, campaigns in the game. Wood Elves are not a good choice for you. Next on the list, it's the Skaven, any of the Skaven legendary lords. Why is that? Well, it comes down to recruitment and their settlements. Skaven are pretty goddamn ridiculous when it comes to both their settlements and the possibilities you have with them, as well as their recruitment. Recruitment-wise, just to understand why they're so crazy, their main settlement buildings give them local +1 recruitment capacity each. So let's say I recruit a lord here, right? And you can see how many recruitment slots I can have here. So in a single turn, I can get an army of 7 units. And this is not even the entire province. The Skaven tide is pretty crazy, all things considered. It's crazy in the hands of the AI, it's crazy in the hands of the player. And yes, you do have the economy to support that. Though if there is any particular weakness with the Skaven, it's that their economy requires them to hold large provinces to make it work, because they're reliant on having a lot of buildings that combined will generate a good amount of economic might. There's also a structure, the Warp Tractor building, that boosts the economy of the entire province by a fairly substantial amount. I think it goes up to 50%. So they've got a strong economy, ridiculously strong economy, though it is vulnerable to losing regions in a province or not having control of the entire province. They've got a ridiculous amount of recruitment slots, which means you don't have to worry, as quite a few races may have to worry, you don't have to worry about being able to recruit armies, how long that's going to take. And yes, you can be certain that skews your perspective in a campaign. The Skaven tide is called that for a reason, it should be said. But finally, and I'd say probably the biggest factor when it comes to Skaven not being suitable to a new player, is the way they conquer settlements and the options they have when that happens. So for instance here I have 106 food. I'm about to spend all of that food. I've defeated the army here at Konda. This is my initial enemy. Now what you do as Skaven when you take a settlement, you can sack it, or indeed did that here, raise it, all that. But if you want to occupy it, you can't just occupy it by default. You can expand another empire, but that's a whole different discussion in its own right. You can expand another empire, or you can just loot and occupy it. If you do it by default, it's going to be level 1. But if you spend food, you start getting into ridiculous levels of nonsense. This is turn 5 of this campaign. And I've got a tier 4 settlement. This is nonsense, to put it plainly. And you get the arcane generators into the warpstone reactor. The generator chain, sorry. I think that was what I wanted to reference earlier. You get that. You start getting other structures. You start becoming... To use the word ridiculous, I don't think does it justice. To consider how powerful this is. The reason this is powerful, and this is just the start by the way, because it actually starts to get even worse. The reason this is powerful is beyond the sheer economic benefit, there's the military benefit. You don't even need a tier 4 settlement. That's a bit exaggerated because you're going to have to build structures from level 1, but what you can get from very early on in your campaign is a tier 3 settlement, which means you can get your artillery. It means you can get all your hero types. It means you can get some of the best and affordable units, most of the best and affordable units in your arsenal. Which means that you're going to have a much better army than anyone else on the campaign from a very early point in said campaign. Meaning you're going to steamroll the campaign. Not a great situation for a new player, because if you're steamrolling it, because if other factions have to recruit units regularly and you're running around with goddamn artillery, machine guns, and powerful melee units because you can get them. Like for instance here, like ignoring the tier 4, though I could go for a tier 4, right? But at tier 4, if I got that, it's not necessarily worth going for tier 4, I feel, because by the time you can get it, you can get these tier 4 buildings, it's going to take a while. But by the time you get there, it's like it's going to naturally grow from tier 3. But at tier 3, for instance, you would get, as I said, artillery, you would get plague monks, you would get rat ogres, Eshin triads, death runners, all those wonderful options. Basically, you are creating an unstoppable tide of death, and you can recruit that tide of death far faster than anyone else. Pretty much, with the exception of perhaps the vampire counts and warriors of caste, but they're not doing that necessarily for regular recruitment. You are doing it for regular recruitment. That's why I wouldn't recommend this campaign, any Skaven campaign, for a new player. Also, you do need to manage food, which isn't recommended to a new player. Because, yeah, you might end up suffering a lot for it. But there's another thing as well. The Undercity mechanic. When you, as shown, when you attack a settlement, you can expand an under city, under empire. Well, what's the under empire mechanic? Well, the under empire mechanic is when things start going from sheer power to plain bullshit. Basically, with the under empire, you create a city underneath a city, and you can generate ridiculous amounts of income. And crucially, there is a structure in the Under Empire. I can't show it here, but there is a structure in the Under Empire which allows you to spread, which gives you a % chance that it will that the Under Empire will automatically spread to other cities, to nearby regions. Which means you can create a massive empire for normal means conquest, but also a massive Under Empire that may generate almost as much income as your regular empire. The power creep is insane. The sheer possibilities that the Skaven have in terms of their faction power are ridiculous, and you effectively ignore quite a lot of limitations that might be put on other factions. You ignore limitations on recruitment slots. Like, there's a lot of bloody recruitment slots I have here, right? Going back to the army here, in a single turn for regular recruitment, I'd get 8 units. Oh. And I can buff that even further for a commandment. Yeah, things do. Skaven are crazy at the moment. Actually, they've always kind of been crazy. The reason behind that is Creative Assembly plays favorites with them. They're incredibly powerful. I would certainly recommend them if you want to have a powerful campaign. But as a new player, if you want to learn the mechanics, you need to have some limitations. You can't just be this powerful. Since you're this powerful, it is bananas. It's also ridiculously easy as essentially most of the Skaven legendary lords because of the old factions. Certainly like Snitch over here, Claw, if you get past his shitty starting position, but Claw is really powerful. And they've just buffed Queek and Tretch, though I would not recommend playing Craventail. He's still awful. Anyway, to move on. Moving on, it's Oxyotl of the Lizardmen. Specifically Oxyotl. The Lizardmen I would actually recommend for a new player, assuming you're willing to play with dumb dinos that don't sound very interesting at all. Honestly, I don't like the Lizardmen personally, but they're in an okay spot as a race. However, Oxyotl is, well, ridiculous. But how is that? Why is Oxyotl ridiculous? Why is he so insane? Why is he not recommended? Well, it's because of his campaign mechanics. So, Oxyotl focuses on chameleon skinks and stalkers. He buffs them up. Nothing wrong with that. It's no different than the skirmish army that Snitch may use. It's no different than some other armies that are available, including Lizard Jesus that's over here. He's a different discussion. But either way, you're buffing basically a skirmisher army. It's not the best playstyle, and you will have issues in siege battles as a result of it. But what makes Oxyotl insane, not recommended, even though he's a fun campaign. Don't get me wrong, he's a very, very fun campaign. But if you're a new player starting out, if you want to learn the Lizardmen, he's probably your worst possible choice. Because he's playing bullshit. Why is that? Well, the vision of the old ones. Well, actually, it's two things. One is the Silent Sanctum. So, what Oxyotl does is he's got gems here, represented by these slots. When you get enough gems, you can make a Silent Sanctum. Now, these Silent Sanctums can be put in any region where you have vision. And they can give you significant buffs to your army, upkeep benefits, all that kind of stuff. There's also a capstone, where you can use that as a teleporter. An instant teleporter anywhere in the campaign. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, with 2.2 that they've limited that teleportation once per turn. Because yes, it starts to get ridiculous. You'll have your capital over here. You'll have your capital. You'll always be able to teleport to that. But then you can get the capstone location. So that's 2 teleport locations. And then there's the Vision of the Old Ones. What did the Vision of the Old Ones do? They offer you objectives to do. And that seems a bit off. But anyway, they offer you objective to do is for various benefits. Like in this case, I'd gain a good amount of money. New visions will be received, etc. Okay. And there's downsides, there's pros, there's cons. Okay, fair enough. Now, here's the thing. You've got missions that are going to spawn randomly around the world, generally aimed at disorder, chaos, vampire counts, coast, etc. And you get instant teleportation across the map to fight to beat someone up. Now, instant teleportation for free with only a 1-turn cooldown gets ridiculous really quickly. Because terrain no longer matters. Map control no longer matters. And you add that to the fact that he starts in the Southern Chaos Waste, where he literally has no major opponent until he starts dealing with Kairos. And he's stronger than Kairos. Far stronger than Kairos Fate Weaver, who was only recently moved over here. But basically, Oxyotl has this entire southern continent. I've talked about the Chaos Waste being one of the best areas of the game. It's because they're inhabited generally by minor factions with very few strong threats, so you can dominate them relatively easily if you're playing over here, giving you a significant amount of power. But yeah, just for territory alone. But Oxyotl has these missions. And beyond the instant teleportation, though, across the map, where you can beat up an army, get a lot of money, then get out, there's another factor as well to it. There's the rewards. Now, consider this. Just me beating up this initial faction, which is occupying 2 settlements here, and only has 1 minor army to their name, would give me 5,000 gold. 5,000 in treasure. And that's just the start. Because you're going to get more than just that. Now, I can't show it, but you can get blessed units. And blessed units are just regular Lizardmen units, but they have slightly better stats. But here's the thing about the blessed units. They get added to a pool, to a recruitment pool. Like if I recruit a lord here, I might be able to show it. But they get added to the blessed spawnings like Regiments of Renown. You can global recruitment, but unlike Regiments of Renown, these blessed units, since they're gained as a reward for doing divisions, are recruited for free. You understood that correctly. You got free recruitment that's pretty much global, as long as you hold territory in the region where you want to recruit them. Free unit recruitment. You can get so many units that you can create more than 1 stack of powerful units in a single turn for free. Now, it's not for free because obviously you have to do the missions, but you get the point. And you have a teleport mechanic. And you have the sanctums, which give you buffs in a region or a province, depending on what you're choosing. Oxyotl is so ridiculously strong and powerful. Like, he doesn't care about an economy because he's going to be swimming in money from all the missions he's going to deal with. He doesn't have threats on his campaign because he's in an area where no one's going to come. No one's going to invade the Southern Chaos Wastes. No one. Like, just because of the distance alone, and the factions here, even if someone was to take the southern tip of Lustria, the chances of anyone threatening you is minimal. You could declare war on the entire world. No one is going to come for you. No one cares. We go further, however, because we can go further than that. You have a safe location. You have a decent baseline economy as the Lizardmen. You get ridiculous amounts of rewards, money, free units for doing these Visions of the Old Ones, and you get teleportation across the world. You could genuinely play a campaign as Oxyotl and not do anything in your starting region and go north. Because once you teleport there, want to fight in Norska, you can get the teleportation there with him. You want to fight in the Northern Castaways, you want to fight in other areas of the map, just wait until you get a mission there and just fight that. It's pretty ridiculous, and although you won't necessarily steamroll the campaign map, it also won't really challenge you or punish you in any way, shape, or form. That's why it's not recommended for a new player. The only thing that's somewhat challenging about his campaign is that one of those vision events can spawn a pretty powerful stack in your initial province. That can be nasty. Fair enough. But considering the sheer amount of power that you have, you still don't care. Hell, you'll have to resolve it, pretty much. And so, yeah, Oxyotl is number 3 on this list. Ridiculously strong. Like, he's already playing a race that's in a fairly decent place, but he's sort of ludicrously strong, flexible, safe, that, yeah, can't be recommended to a new player. Even though it's a fun campaign, don't get me wrong. It is a very, very fun campaign to play, because you're playing Lizardmen Rambo, basically, just showing up from the middle of nowhere to beat people up. That's fun. It absolutely is. But if you're on to learn the game, can't be recommended as an early campaign. Next on the list is Archaon the Ever-Chosen, or Warriors of Chaos, Champions of Chaos in general, but Archaon in particular. Archaon in particular because he's gaining a lot of benefits from vassals, diplomatic relations from vassals, and souls from each vassal faction. The Warriors of Chaos are dependent on vassals, or not really dependent, they could do just fine without them, but they benefit greatly from vassals, soul-wise, economy, armies to throw around. Like, for instance, over here, I've allowed Boris Ursus to control this entire province here, and he's got a ridiculous amount of power as a result of it. Actually, this is the strongest I've ever seen him be on a campaign, and Archaon helped him do it. This can give you an idea. Now, the vassal system is a bit broken, and does need some changes, I'm guessing, when it comes to it, because your vassals are not going to declare war on factions you declare war on. Some issues all around, but it doesn't matter. Why is Warriors of Chaos not recommended for a new player? Well, with the Wood Elves, I talked about how, because they only rely on a few settlements, they're very safe in their campaign. That applies to Chaos as well. If you're playing a Chaos faction, the only settlements you care about are these Dark Fortresses. I'm missing that one. I would have wanted to get it, but whatever. Why is that? Because they generate a substantial amount of income, and they're fairly well defended. Even at a low level, at tier 2, this has got 12 units, and it's a walled settlement. It's not like a tree of the Wood Elves, which is an open field battle, more or less, or a minor settlement battle, really. This is a walled settlement. It's an absolute nightmare to take, even if you have a strong army. And most of the time, the AI is going to send bad army compositions to attack you. If they ever send an attack your way against one of these Dark Fortresses, I don't think... I have to struggle really hard to think of a time in any campaign where any of my core Dark Fortresses was attacked. Generally, it's the outlying ones that are under threat, and even then, I think I can count on one hand in all the campaigns I've played as Warriors of Chaos how many times they've attacked. So you're incredibly safe. Then there's the vassalization system, which got a major buff in some of the recent patches. If you're playing, and this applies really to Archaon or Be'lakor, because you can vassalize now human and elven factions. This starts getting ridiculous when you start realizing, like, he hates my guts, but he's not going to declare war on me because I subjugated him. And he's got a really powerful army. And even if he declared war on me, I've got 2 vassal armies, 3 vassal armies ready to annihilate him 4 vassal armies to annihilate him if he steps on a line. That's the beauty of someone like Archaon. Even if someone steps on a line, the other guys will annihilate them. And you get such a major diplomatic benefit with demons, with Norskins and all that they're gonna love you regardless. It doesn't matter. We go further than that, though, because you've also got the recruitment system, and it's probably best if I show you how this in another army. So over here, I'm just gonna recruit 2 units, then move province. And just bear in mind, I'm in forced march stance. You move province, you can recruit on a global level as the Warriors of Chaos. And on top of just your regular recruitment, you've got gifted units, which you gain through the Gifts of Chaos, so you can get some really, really powerful units. Artillery, Furies, etc. Bloodthirsters, you've got access to some of the best demonic units, like Bloodthirsters, Great Unclean One, Keeper of Secrets, all that good stuff, right? You've got access to Lord of Change. You've got access to all of them through the Gifts of Chaos. Though there is a limit to how many gifted units you can have in an army, unless you're talking about Be'lakor, who doesn't have that. Okay. So you get very strong recruitment, but it doesn't stop there. Then you can take your units and you can upgrade them through the recruitment system, for the warband upgrade system. This is incredible because it allows you to keep going in the campaign. Never stop, never cease, never go back to get units that you may need. You don't need to. You get all the units. Your entire roster is available for global recruitment, either through warband upgrades or for gifted units. You've got access to everything. Like, consider this army. Like, outside of these two Marauders of Khorne, everything here is pretty good, right? Well, maybe the Chaos Warhounds, but these guys, these Chaos Warriors with Grey Weapons, are incredibly good units. On top of that, your Dark Fortresses are incredibly powerful from an economic perspective because they generate a ridiculous amount of income, and it starts stacking, especially when we're talking about post-battle loot, stacking settlements. Furthermore, when it comes to all of this, the nail in the coffin is this: your units are amazing in auto-resolve. You can go entire campaigns playing as the Warriors of Chaos on the highest difficulty of the game, on Legendary very hard, and not have to fight a single battle manually. Ever. You might want to do it for the sake of extra post-battle benefits, more experience potentially, all that. But you can go entire campaigns steamrolling a map, going from battle to battle, never stopping, never ceasing, plunging head first into like, I could take Archaon and plunge directly into the middle of the Empire, and you know what? I'd win. Without potentially having to fight a battle. Or even if you have to fight the battle, it doesn't matter, because of your strong recruitment options, where like Skaven, those Skaven have to get the structures. You don't have to get the structures. The vampire counts have a similar benefit because of the raised end mechanic. Theirs might be a bit stronger because you can get really high tier units from the very start, though you can get some as well with the gifted units, but otherwise you might have to upgrade them. But because of your strong recruitment and upgrade system, you're just going to have far more powerful armies than anyone else, especially in the early game. And if you get a great early game start, by the time you get into the late game, you've just dominated the entire planet without pausing. I kid you not, the steamroller effect this has is incredible. But you might see the problems that for a new player. Not having to worry about minor settlements, getting an incredible... Not really having to worry about diplomacy either, especially as Archaon. Like, order factions are going to hate you regardless. Demonic factions are going to love you regardless as Archaon. The vassal diplomacy doesn't matter. I don't think I've seen a vassal come close to rebelling declaring a rebellion at any particular point. I don't think it can happen. Or if it happens, if it is very, very rare and they need to be fairly strong for them to do so. Maybe Boris would do it in a campaign considering all the territory and armies he's holding, but potentially not. But you might understand why that's a problem. A campaign where you're ignoring, where you don't care about diplomacy, where you don't care about battles, where you don't care about the safety of your territory, where your economy is very strong, that's not the campaign for a new player if they want to learn the game. I mean, it is a great campaign for a new player if they just want to steamroll the map with zero effort. But there's something completely and utterly broken. Don't get me wrong. Don't want people to take this the wrong way. I love the Warriors of Chaos right now in the campaign. They're a great race to play. Archaon is great to play. Except he's so far ahead of the curve that, well, you're just steamrolling everything. Kind of gets boring, actually. You're too strong. You're winning too much. Actually, it's true for Archaon. Because playing a game is more than just like steamrolling everything. Like, if you want a race to steamroll everything with ease, yeah, he's your great choice. But if you want to learn the mechanics of the game, have an actual challenge, be provoked to improve, all that, is one of the worst campaigns to have for that. As any of the warriors guess. The issues, though, are worse for Archaon, but it applies to all of the warriors of Chaos. He just gets that major diplomatic benefit and Soul's benefit, but really it's the diplomatic benefit. And he also has an amazing starting position here. I don't think at any point in any campaign an Order army has come even close to attacking his core regions. It is ridiculous. Finally, there are the Beastmen. The Beastmen certainly aren't a recommended race for a new player, because of their specific playstyle. They're a DLC race. It's interesting to note that many of the races here end up being DLC races, or DLC lords, in the case of Oxyotl. Though not in all cases, the Skaven for instance. Here's the thing about the Beastmen. They don't deal in diplomacy. Diplomacy doesn't really exist for Beastmen, or is incredibly limited. They don't trade, they don't really have an economy. All the money they earn, all the favor they earn it by wrecking settlements. And they use it purely for constructing buildings. Units are recruited for free, though they are limited based on a cap. Because one of the second currency that you're going to use as the Beastmen is going to be Dread, and that's going to be used to increase your unit capacity. They're also in annoying spot on the campaign, because they're very strong if you increase the caps, but increasing those caps means managing Dread. Basically, if you're playing a Beastmen campaign, you don't really deal with the regular economy, because the regular economy is irrelevant. You deal with the Dread situation. And you always want to worry about increasing some of these caps, in particular for the good units. You don't want to bother with some of the bad units, right? You want to bother with the good units, like Minotaurs, for instance, or Feral Manticores. No, not Feral Manticores. Cygors, Gorgons. Maybe Feral Manticores would be okay. Harpies, not so much. But this creates a weird situation where you're going to play much of the early campaign just using Ungor Raiders, as well as Ungor, just Ungors in general. A bunch of the Ungor units. Though not all of them, because some of them, the Spearmen with shields and the herd itself, are also limited. But the Ungor Spearmen ones are not. Basically, you're going to use an army like this. Or, really, you're just going to get an Ungor army. The armies themselves are limited until you can increase the army capacity of with your faction. You don't bother with settlements, you bother with hordes, but your hordes don't require a lot of effort. As for the Hearthstones, well, they're incredibly potent settlements that are there to give you benefits in a region, and really mark a region of the map as your hunting grounds. The more enemies you fight, the more battles you fight in a Hearthstone influence area, the more it fills up. Once it fills up, you can do a ritual to increase your ruination meter. Now, not having to deal with an economy pretty much in any way, the only way to earn money is for raiding and raising settlements. Not having to deal with regions effectively, and even the Hearthstones themselves are not really relevant. As long as you hold one, you will not lose a campaign. And although they're not quite as invulnerable as the Dark Fortresses of Chaos, they're still fairly strong settlements with a powerful garrison. It takes a lot to take down one, and you've got free recruitment of units, so you can just, once you get the army capacity higher, you can just put down an army in any of them to just purely defend them very, very easily. While your main army goes around killing stuff, getting more money that you use to increase your horde buildings. There's obviously benefits to doing so. Various benefits, horde capacity in terms of recruitment, hero recruitment, various units that you can unlock. Various benefits that you can unlock, including this particular structure that gives you a lot of dread per turn. Having a lot of armies can be incredibly beneficial because you can use them to generate a lot of dread per turn to increase your caps. But it certainly isn't. It certainly plays in a very unique way. It's fun. It's powerful. But it's not recommended for a new player. It's as divorced as you can get from the core gameplay mechanics that everyone else is dealing with. I mean, Warriors of Chaos still have to deal with settlements, right? And an economy. Wood Elves still have to deal with diplomacy, proper diplomacy, not the meme that the Warriors of Chaos diplomacy is. The Warriors of Chaos still have regular diplomacy. Skaven still have to worry about settlement. Oxyotl still has to worry about settlements himself. You don't. You don't care about settlements. You don't care about an economy. You don't care about defending your settlements. Hell, even your armies are outright disposable. The only thing you might give a shit about if you lose an army is the heroes in the said army. That's about it. Tomb Kings have a similar situation, but Tomb Kings at least have settlements and diplomacy and trade to deal with. Again, it's not a bad campaign. As I've said again and again, it's not about bad campaigns or good campaigns or anything like that. It's like, which campaign is good as a learning tool and which are not. Beastmen are as far away from being ideal as a learning tool as you can possibly get in Warhammer 3. Because of their lack of diplomatic options. Because they don't have any. I press quick deal, nothing happens. Because there are no diplomatic options. The only diplomatic options that exist for you are declarations of war and maybe peace. Though no one's going to want peace with you. Everyone despises you. That's about it for Beastmen diplomacy. You're playing the furries. The dumb furries, really. And it's reflected. It's appropriate for their campaign. Don't get me wrong. It's all appropriate. I think if there's any particular issues with the Beastmen, is that they could use a cheaper way to increase their caps. Because, yeah, getting all that dread can be a bit of a pain. I mean, 250 dread just to get one capacity for feral manticores and harpies, or 100. I mean, it's 2, granted, don't get me wrong, but yeah, it's not particularly that great. I think maybe increasing this to free. This could stay 2, but yeah, some of these are free to all that would make it worth it. Or just reducing some of the costs, that would work better. I mean, you can get a lot of dread, don't get me wrong, but it's just like having a faster start might be more welcome. But once you steamroll the map, you steamroll the map. But you're not gonna learn how to play the game properly, or to play the game as the vast majority of the factions would play the game if you're gonna pick up the game as Beastmen. Great campaign, a lot of fun, don't get me wrong, and they buffed Taurox. I wouldn't say they fixed Taurox, though that's the wording they'd use, because I don't think he was broken, at least as far as memory serves when it came to Warhammer 2. It just there were a lot more AI armies in Warhammer 2 as far as I recall. And that's why he didn't have a momentum issue, whereas he did have a momentum issue in Warhammer 3. But still very powerful horde. Now he's improved. Far fewer issues. Anyway, that's all I had to say. Obviously, there are some other races, some other factions, some other campaigns to talk about, like Kislev, Empire, you know, all the issues that exist for them. But at the same time, or all the issues that exist for Karl Franz. But I would stay away from these particular races, these particular lords, because you know, if you're playing the Empire, you are going to have a rough time, but there are a lot of things that you can learn playing an Imperial campaign that you can apply to playing the vast majority of factions. If you're playing a Beastmen campaign or Warriors of Chaos or Skaven, there's not as much, really. That's all I had to say. Costin signing out. Don't forget to subscribe, like, enable notifications, and I'll see you next time.